Last year, I ran a 2:45 marathon. I had a remote job and plenty of flexibility to train. That's the dream scenario, right? But that's not the full story. I've also trained in far more difficult situations. I ran a 308 marathon while working as a chef, full-time, 50 hours a week on my feet all day, and I also spent months traveling Asia in high heat and high humidity, constantly changing environments and lots of chaos, and still managed a sub-3-hour marathon at Bangkok. So yes, a flexible job did help, but it wasn't the reason that I ran that time. The actual reason was far more simple. I made running a priority, and I always found a way to make it work. Conditions were rarely perfect, but I always adapted, and so can you. In this video, we'll look at the principles that I use to become a faster and stronger runner year on year, as well as practical advice to find time for and optimize your training no matter what your life looks like. And by the way, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, it would mean so much. And look, before we look at any principles, it's worth saying this up front. Training properly for a marathon or any serious running goal is not easy. There's a reason that times like the sub-3-hour marathon are so elusive. You have to work for them, and the faster you get, the more work you have to do. So before you commit, you need to ask yourself an honest question. Is this going to be worth it for me? Because when you start taking anything seriously, whether it's running or starting a YouTube channel or whatever, it requires sacrifice. You might have to start spending a bit more time away from your family to do long runs, you might be a bit more tired at work, or you might have to give up drinking at social events. For example, I was just at one of my mates' stag do's recently, and I was completely, well, mostly teetotal. It was a sacrifice that I deemed worth it, and even though I got rinsed by everyone there and even felt a little pressured, it was again for me worth it. Because in my eyes, when you commit to running these kind of times, you're basically committing to a lifestyle, and that lifestyle often requires sacrifice. So again, you need to ask yourself, is this truly what I want? Not what you think you want because of social media, but what you want. If it is, and with that in mind, let's look at the principles. So the first principle is have a plan. If you've got a goal, whether it's a sub-3 marathon or your first 5K, you should absolutely make a plan to achieve it. Your plan could include detailed sessions every day, like the cross-training, stretching, and workouts that you're going to do. Or it could even be like as basic as, I'm going to run 3 days a week. That's something, and honestly, that's fine. I lean more into the former because I'm a bit of a type A person, but it's completely up to the individual. But whatever you do decide, don't rely on vibes and seeing how you feel, because most of the time when it comes down to it, let's be honest, you can't be asked. You need at least some guidance to achieve your goal. But, and I cannot stress this enough, the plan is not gospel. Be willing to tear it up and throw it away if you need to, which is what this second principle, perfection is the enemy of good, is all about. If for whatever reason you can't stick to your original plan, find a compromise. You can still do something. For example, if you're too knackered to run a speed session, do an easy session instead. If the weather outside's crap, try and find a treadmill and do something indoors instead. And if your legs are tired, then go to the gym or get your legs on the yoga mat for a stretch or something like that. Basically, it's all about your head. When you start thinking things aren't worth doing unless they're perfect, that's when things start to fail. That's when people start to fail hitting their goals. And this is only exacerbated by social media posts showing people doing perfect workouts and so on. But that's not how real life works. Life has challenges and distractions, and when they do hit, most of the time, good enough has to do. So a compromised session keeps you moving, whereas a skip session basically does nothing for you. But if there's one mindset that ties all this together, it's the third principle. Pragmatism is king. I honestly believe that pragmatism is one of the best attributes a person can have, in general. And in a similar vein to the previous point, like I've said, striving for perfection is good, but life is rarely perfect, so sometimes good enough has to do. Really can't stress this enough. So with that in mind, look at your life situation and think, how can I incorporate training in a way that's pragmatic with my lifestyle? Forget about what the running gurus on YouTube are telling you is perfect, and think about what is actually in front of you, what your life actually looks like. So for example, in my case, when I was traveling around Asia, it was honestly often so chaotic. The heat and humidity was so hard, the roads weren't great, and there'd be wild animals just everywhere. So sometimes it'd be really a challenge to get the training in. For example, one time we were in Malaysia and we were camping on the edge of this beach, and there was a single road in and out of the area. And I was headed out for a run, and on that day, there was the most shredded, ripped monkey you've ever seen guarding the road. And I just thought, fuck that. But I wasn't giving up either. I couldn't get to the main road, but there was a short loop around the beach on this sort of rough dirt trail. The terrain wasn't great, but I just did that over and over until I got the distance, and so it was a little more cumbersome. Wasn't ideal, but it did work. So, that's a good example of just pragmatism. It's about using the tools that you actually have in front of you, not just only accepting the perfect tools, you know what I mean? So for example, if you don't have a track nearby, you can just find, the flattest loop you have, and it'll probably do just as well. If you don't have any gym equipment, then you can find some heavy stuff and just use that, like a backpack full of books or a heavy plant pot, for instance. And if you want to get some heat adaptation in, but you can't get somewhere hot, you can use alternative methods like the sauna or some extra layers. We'll have a whole video on that, by the way, if you're interested in learning more. So those are like the high level principles that I keep in mind when I'm going through my training, especially when I'm traveling or the conditions aren't perfect. But obviously, I've picked up a few practical lessons on the way, and I want to share those as well. So in terms of lifestyle, that kind of holistic, integrating training in your life in a way that fits your life, the first suggestion that I have is merge your tasks. So for example, when I was working as a chef, the kitchen was a perfect 5k away from my house. I had a car and I could have driven at the time, but I merged my commute and my run together. So it was 5k there and then a very hilly 5k back, and that worked out to running 10k a day, and I got a free commute. So it was kind of a win-win. The second thing is kind of use the cracks in the day. So there's always kind of these little cracks of time where you can fit stuff in. For me, that meant like doing a workout while I'm on passive work calls where I don't really need to be involved, or while I'm watching TV, or like doing some stretching while I'm waiting for a bus, or even like squeezing a run in on my lunch break or something. Like there's always a way you can fit something in, even if it's like 5 minutes here or there. The third lifestyle tip I've got is to let go of social norms. Like stretching at the bus stop, like I've just said, or working out in an airport or something. It might look weird, but honestly, it isn't. You'll get weird looks for a moment or something, and then the people who are staring at you are just going to go back to living their lives, looking at the phone or whatever. And meanwhile, you're moving the needle forward. So are you going to hold yourself back because of like a snap judgment by some random people that you're never going to see again? The next section of tips that I want to give is around training adaptation. So like how you can actually be pragmatic around training. So the fourth tip is adapting to the environment. So I already mentioned the monkey story, but in a similar vein, I was staying with a friend in Andorra. And I don't know if you've been to Andorra, but it's fucking hilly. Nothing but hills, at least where I was. So I kind of had to adapt my sessions, my easy runs, to be much slower so that my heart rate wouldn't spike, because I was constantly running uphill or downhill. And also I just changed all my speed work to be like hill sessions. So kind of using the terrain to my advantage almost. The fifth tip is to get creative with gear. Like we've already mentioned some of these, but like, if you've got, if you don't have a track, go on the flattest loop. If you don't have gym equipment, then find some heavy stuff like a backpack or like a heavy plant pot or like just anything really. Like you don't have to have the perfect gear to do a workout. You can find something. The sixth tip is around double days, so running twice a day. It's not only possible, but for many people it's actually preferred. So breaking a 12 miler into 2 separate 6 milers, for example, still gives you that aerobic volume, but it massively reduces the mechanical load and the injury risk that comes with that when you're fatigued. So I was basically doing that when I was doing the 5Ks to work. I was breaking up the 10K into 2 5Ks, and that was kind of reducing my injury risk while still giving me that, aerobic stimulus. It's also good for metabolism, by the way, breaking up the runs, so something to think about. The seventh tip, and this might be a bit obvious to some people, is to adjust for fatigue. Being on my feet all day when I was working as a chef meant that my legs were usually pretty tired. My quality workouts I kept the same because you kind of don't want to compromise those, but I sort of adjusted my easy runs to a much slower pace to ensure that I didn't burn out, basically. So those are some very specific principles and tips that you can use to kind of adapt your training regardless of what your life situation is. Whether you've got kids or you're living in a place where it's not really ideal for running, whatever it might be, there's always something you can do. But if there's one thing that you're going to take away from this video, please let it be this. You do not need perfect conditions to improve as a runner. Be pragmatic and accept good enough, and you can go a long way. By the way, anyone who watches this channel probably already knows me and knows that I think that social media has its pros but can be dangerous. People only show the best sides on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and they rarely show the sorts of logistical challenges that like a normal person faces. So, don't compare yourself exclusively to what you see on Instagram, because there's a piece of the story usually there that you're not actually seeing. You're just seeing the polished, refined version, and all of that stuff's hidden away in the background. And this isn't just me, by the way. My coach at my running club, for example, he ran a 2:30 marathon while working like a really intense labor job, like a manual labor job. So it's not impossible to do this with a job that isn't at a desk. You just need to be creative. And by the way, I'd love to do a sort of day in the life showing this sort of thing, but I'm not fully recovered from my injury right now. But if there is appetite for that, I'd definitely do that later. There's of course way more to running and training than what I've covered here, by the way, but this is purely looking at how you can train consistently and well in spite of unfavorable conditions. The things I haven't talked about include good recovery, sleep, solid training plan, and a bunch of other things to consider, which also includes running slow, which you can learn more about on the video on the screen. And if you want more running science videos like this, please subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.